had an experience again, a little over 5 years ago where late one night got an email. Almost never check my email at night, but I just for some reason had a compulsion to. I walked down there, opened it up. I got an email from one of my closest friends, and I saw that it had been sent to over 100 people, and opened it up, and basically what he was saying is that, hey, I no longer consider myself a Christian. I'm going to be leaving our church, no longer believe in Jesus, and hey, this is just something I've decided to do. And I was super crushed, just because this was one of my closest friends. He had been a leader at our church for many, many years, and I was, of course, hurt by the decision, but I was also kind of personally hurt just because, we'd been close enough friends that we had talked with different ways he'd struggled with his faith and how to kind of marry that with his kind of rationality and things like that. And but this was kind of like, oh man, someone hit skip on the DVD or something like I know it's an old reference now, but that hey, we were talking about some of this and now you're just gone. It's like waking up one morning and just a room in your house is empty, kind of thing. And so I didn't message him back right away just because I knew that lots of people were going to be saying lots of things to him for a while. And also I kind of wanted to work through the part of myself that was personally hurt by the way that he communicated it, because I didn't want that to taint, whatever I would have to say for him. So I waited about 3 months, which is kind of way too long and not long enough at the same time. And sent him a text, said, hey, go grab some coffee. And he said, sure. And so I drove up to the coffee house, and I walked in, and he looked exactly the same as he always had. I don't know why I expected him to look different. I still saw his personal angel standing next to him, looking the same as it always had, and even it looked the same. Although maybe something in his expression looked a little bit sad. That also might have been me, projecting that a little bit. I see personal angels with everyone I've ever met, whether they're close to God or not close to God, and whether they are doing good or not good in their life, they still love and serve God's purposes in that person's life. And so I sat down, and I'm not a big arguer. Even when I talk about seeing the Spirit stuff, I don't like putting a lot of effort into trying to convince people that what I have to say is legitimate or to validate or whatever. I'd much rather just present what I have to say, and people can use their own discernment to decide what they feel about that. And that's how I am with regard to defending the faith and things like that too, so I didn't really have these theological arguments that I wanted to throw at him, but as I had thought for those 3 months, I kind of had these 5 points, these 5 things that I wanted to say that were just kind of, I would regret if I didn't say these things, and so, we chatted, and I actually started by just letting him know that I was, personally hurt by hey, we've been good friends. And then, hey, I'm just one of these 100 people that get this email. I feel like we were closer than that. And he was able to apologize for that and kind of validate my need there. And I felt that kind of last bit of pain sort of, resolve. And so I felt good going forward. And so I kind of built up, let him know, hey, I've got these 5 things I want to say. I'm not going to try to argue with you, but here it is. And so I built up to the first point, and as soon as I opened my mouth for the first kind of keystone point, I saw this golden arrow come out of my mouth as I spoke it. And this arrow was pure gold, tip to tip. The head was gold, the shaft was gold, the fletching on the end was pure gold. Came out of my mouth, it was flying directly towards the center of his forehead. And as soon as it got about 2 inches away from there, his angel very quickly and skillfully stepped forward and snatched that arrow out of the air. And at first I thought, whose side are you on?
Right.
Yeah. And, I have enough background experience to know that this wasn't a last minute angel rebellion or something, but I was still confused. I'm like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
Totally threw me. I very rarely react to the stuff that I see in the Spirit just because I don't want to
freak people out.
Be weird.
Yeah.
But that totally threw me. I stumbled over my words, dropped off mid-sentence, kind of recovered, and moved on to the second point. Came to the second point. Once again, just as I kind of spoke the keynote phrase, golden arrow came out of my mouth, going directly towards his forehead, and once again, angel snatched it out of the air so that it had 2 arrows in its hand. Now, I was starting to get disturbed a little bit. I'm like, what's this is so weird. What's going on? And, more than that, also, I could see my friend's body language, that he was getting a little bit more reserved, getting a bit more defensive, And so because of that, because of this weird spiritual thing going on, I kind of blurted out the last 3 points kind of from a more emotional place, and just let those out. And I watched 3 golden arrows come out of my mouth. These were heading directly towards the center of his chest. And this time the angel stepped in front of him, and all 3 of those arrows went directly into its chest and didn't touch him at all. And so the conversation wrapped up. I don't know what I was hoping for exactly, but it definitely didn't see much impact, on him. We committed to, doing our best to stay friends and to stay connected in this process, but that was it. And so he left first. I hung around for a little while, just kind of sitting and thinking. And after a bit, I got up and I went to my car, sat down in the driver's seat. And as soon as I sat down and turned to my right, I saw my friend's angel sitting in the passenger seat. 3 arrows in its chest, 2 arrows in its hand.
What?
And it pulled the 3 arrows out of its chest so that it now had 5 arrows in its hand. It set them head down in the cup holder between the seats. And with this kind of genuine, this sigh of kind of sadness, it looked at me and said, "I'm sorry, but your arrows are too dirty. You're going to have to try again another time."
What?
And then it left. So,
jeez.
Yeah, I thought about that for a long time. I ran all the things through my head of, okay, my friend had made a decision. He was just stuck in his decision and didn't want to hear what I had to say. But if that was the case, I would have expected the arrows to bounce off of him or to be deflected by him in some way, not an angel who's definitely a servant of God's purposes, block and deflect this thing. I thought, well, okay, maybe some of that personal hurt had, stuck around, and that was what was doing it. But I really did my best to try to work through that beforehand, so that doesn't, really make sense. Or, I'm sure maybe there was something left, but I definitely did my best, And, then I thought, well, maybe there's something wrong with my theology or my rhetoric or whatever else. But again, I couldn't really think of what would be wrong with it. I still kind of believe all the things that I had said in that moment. The part that really struck me the most is that even though the angel said that, even as I looked down at them in the cup holder, those arrows looked perfect to me. They were perfectly gold end to end. I couldn't see any dirt on them at all. And so that experience really kind of led me into a much broader and wider discovery and conversation around like what, and even though that was obviously an experience that was specific to me, but I think we've all had that experience, maybe not about that exact same situation, but you see something godly, you see something in God's nature, you know something of the truth of his kingdom, of his nature, of the Bible, and you go to share it with someone and it just kind of falls flat. It just doesn't land, it doesn't have the impact, it's not received. And yeah, again, just like me, there could be, they're not ready to receive it, or maybe I'm missing something or whatever else. But there's also these times that I think we all experience. It's like, why didn't this good thing, come through the veil? It's right here. Why isn't it working? And so it led me on this whole journey, which turned into this book. And so the answer to that question is really, something I've just been wrestling with and struggling with for quite some time now.
Did you ever get an answer on why your arrows were dirty?
I did. And I think probably, to explain it effectively, I'll have to tell this this other story. So to make the whole of the book very, very short, the Lord really led me down this path, and we talked about this a little bit last time when I was on the podcast. But really understanding this kind of biblical concept of empires, that the spiritual struggle that we have in the world is not just a struggle between God and the enemy. Such a struggle wouldn't be much of a problem because God can handle that quite easily. The struggle, in fact, I would suggest that most of our struggle is really with ourselves. And this, to address it very briefly, if we go all the way back to the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve ate this forbidden fruit from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. That wasn't just wrong because God said not to do it. It was also a fundamental violation of the order of how God had created a relationship with us. It was a choice that, hey, I want to decide what's good and evil for myself. And this, is exacerbated as people go out and begin to multiply and start founding cities. Cain kills Abel, goes on to found the first city. The Garden of Eden is a picture of God's kingdom on the earth, and we were responsible to perpetuate that garden, to care for it, not to build a garden of our own. And even the founding of cities, the founding of great empires, is a picture of what we build out of our own knowledge of good and evil. And if you go to the Tower of Babel, for example, it's like, based on, we're going to build our own way to heaven. Mm-hmm. And God even says, like, they're going to be able to do it, Mm-hmm. But again, it's founded on the knowledge of good and evil, and so he undermined that. And if you even go back and study some of these ancient empires, the Egyptians, Assyrians, Babylonians, Mesopotamians, all these people, you can almost see, I like to kind of compare it to like this inter-empirical rap battle of like who has the best laws, who's got the best set of laws, the most. That's why even in the Bible you'll see these like really specific, detailed, like, okay, well, hey, yeah, your law has a rule if someone's donkey gets hit by a cart. Well, our law has if someone's foot gets stepped on a donkey while a cart is crossing in front of them. Look at how awesome
we've thought of everything.
Look at our justice. Like, look how thorough it is. And this, you kind of see this kind of thing going back and forth. And again, that's rooted in the knowledge of good and evil. Let's build what's right and wrong from our own perspective. And Jesus is really the answer to the opposite of that, of hey, here's what it looks like to build a kingdom like God. Here is what God's kingdom looks like. And it's the way that one would perpetuate power and rule on the earth. The way that Jesus represented it is almost upside down and backwards from the way that we would think that you perpetuate power. It's actually the least that are the greatest. It's that we should actually care for the weak, for the humble, for the poor, for the widow, the orphan. And it's just completely inverse and backwards. And so now we live in an age where we constantly, both within the church, without the church, on the big scale between countries and worlds, even as small as all the way down to our families, we have this temptation to have our own righteousness, our own sense of right and wrong, and build on that. And I got the answer to why those arrows didn't work when I was studying this concept. And I was studying two different prophets who were both sent by God to address some of these empires. And you can read the story for yourself, but the prophets I was comparing was Jonah and Daniel. And Jonah is, in many ways, could be titled Jonah, How Not to Be a Prophet, because it's a very funny book. And he's like, he doesn't want to go to Nineveh, goes in the opposite direction. We all know the story. Gets thrown off the boat, eaten by a fish. Says this very poetic sort of prayer to God where he doesn't quite apologize for not going the right direction, but he reminds God of how great a protector he is and all of that, and then ends up, going to Nineveh finally, gives the worst version of a prophetic word ever. It's like, 40 days and Nineveh will be overthrown, and that's it. And he goes out and kind of like a movie, the city really repents, and there's a huge, despite his poor presentation, the city repents. It's this great, turning, and God decides not to destroy the city. And we kind of get to chapter 4 of the book of Jonah, and we find Jonah is angry with God, and we find out why he ran away. It's kind of like a movie where it flashes back to an earlier conversation that we didn't hear, where he's like, hey, I knew that you were going to be merciful and righteous to these people, and I that's why I didn't want to come. So he realized, like, he's not scared of Nineveh. he didn't want them. He knew what would happen, and he didn't want them to be saved. Now, you do a little bit of research. Nineveh is the capital city of the Assyrian Empire. They were a notoriously brutal empire. They were one of the first empires that really made a business of conquering other peoples. Some of the others did this, but they perfected it. They were really brutal to anyone who would rise up against them, and were very, very cruel, very violent. And so you can understand, maybe why he wouldn't want them to be saved. But God is kind of sitting there, giving him this sight lesson that we see of, this plant that grows up. And he's like, hey, you care more about this plant that was giving you shade than you care about these people. There's over 120,000 people in there who don't know their right hand from their left hand. And he's basically coaching Jonah, like, hey, there's people in there. Like, you want me to blow that city up? And it ends kind of with a cliffhanger ending where we don't really see what the resolution is with regard to just, Jonah being there and being angry. And to me, this is a picture of a prophet who is sent to release God's word to a wicked empire, but it's a prophet who has not been transformed by God's nature. He knew enough about God's nature to know that God was going to be merciful, but he did not allow God's nature to transform him into also becoming merciful. Now, Daniel's the exact opposite. Daniel could probably be titled How to Be a Prophet. He's a prophet that's also sent into the middle of a wicked empire. In fact, the successor to the Assyrians, the Babylonians. And I always kind of zoom in on this one story where right after the whole fiery furnace fiasco, Nebuchadnezzar's built a big statue of himself and, hey, bow down or I'll kill you, and throws his friends in the fire, but they're protected by God. Nebuchadnezzar has this dream, and we'll find out later that this dream is a dream of judgment. Like, hey, for your pride and your arrogance, God's gonna humble you. And the way that Daniel chooses to present this judgmental prophetic word is evident of a prophet who not only is obedient to God, but has also been transformed by his nature. He basically says, hey, I wish I was giving this to someone else. I'm sorry to bring you this harsh word. I wish I was giving this to one of your enemies. And goes in to explain that Nebuchadnezzar is going to lose his mind for a period of time. He's going to be humbled, and then he's going to know that God is God and he's not. And just the difference in attitude. And Jonah's story ends with an obscure ending on the side of a hill. Daniel served king after king after king, influencing the heart of a wicked empire with God's nature. And so I'd studied this several times, and I was sitting in my office reading this over again, kind of contemplating this and kind of realizing that, okay, is there something in me that's not yet transformed? And the minute I had that thought, I just heard the Lord say, you were more like Jonah than you were like Daniel in that moment, even though my intent was to have a right heart and a right attitude. And he said to me very kindly, but very directly, hey, I was thinking this, like, hey, those arrows look perfect to me. And he said, that's not how they look to me. You actually couldn't even see how they really looked, because those were not arrows from my kingdom towards your friend. That was arrows from your kingdom to his. And justifiably, a heavenly servant had to protect him from the arrows of a foreign empire.
Wow.
And so even though my intent was good, something in my presentation or where that came from wasn't rooted in his kingdom. It was rooted in my own kingdom. And so that's why those arrows didn't land.